Hello and welcome to the video tutorial for how to make the Ellie backless dress. I absolutely adore this dress and this is very beginner friendly. It comes in sizes extra small through 3XL, comes in formats AO, US letter, and A4. This dress can be tied across the back or around the neck to secure it. It's super flattering, has that scrunch back, and is full length. And if you guys have any questions throughout this, please let me know and let's go ahead and get started sewing. So I've already assembled my pattern and cut out all my pieces, and I'm going to start with the back main fabric piece. Now you can see, I know it's really light, but I've marked in chalk where the center line is all the way down to where the ruching is going to stop. And I've cut my elastic, and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to pull this elastic and sew it on so that it is the full length of where that ruching is. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to start by just doing a little bit for my seam allowance, and then I'm going to put my elastic underneath my needle, do a couple stitches first so it's secure, and then I'm going to pull my elastic. So basically when I'm not pulling, when this is all sewn, the fabric will ruche up and hold its shape. So your elastic's only going to be 6.5 inches, and when your dress is sewn and the elastic is on it, that will also only be 6.5 inches. So it will really shorten your dress. Now if you're using fabric like me and it's kind of heavy, like if you have a velvet or if you have sequins, you can do 2 pieces of elastic and sew them on top of each other. That's what I'm doing here. It'll just help it hold its shape better, but again, this is optional. So now that we have our back piece scrunched, we are going to grab our main fabric front piece, and I just pointed it out right where that drop is. It's kind of the under armpit. We're going to take our back piece that we just scrunched and we're going to place it right sides facing up against our main fabric front piece. And I'm going to clip all of these all the way down the remainder of the dress, so all the way down to the bottom. And then once I've got that pinned on both sides, we're going to sew this into place. Remember, when you're sewing, you're going to want to do a zigzag stitch because this is a stretch dress, so don't forget to use a zigzag stitch. And now I've got that all set up, I'm just going to trim my seam allowance. We'll do this throughout this entire thing. We're going to trim all of our seam allowance. Now I flipped my dress right sides out. We're going to take our strap piece and we are going to take these and place them right sides facing, and we are going to pin just at the top and sew that into place. And once we've sewn that into place, just like we did our other one, we are going to trim off our seam allowance for our strap. Once that's done, we're going to set aside that main fabric. These are my 2 lining back pieces. I know these look kind of funky, but what we're going to do is we're going to place these right sides facing. I have a notch right there that is marked on your pattern. This is where we will start sewing them down, so don't sew above that notch. So I'm going to pin this in place going all the way down the length of the dress from where that notch is, and I'm going to sew this down into place with right sides facing. And once again, we are just going to trim off that seam allowance. Once that's done, we're just going to repeat the past 2 steps that we did. One thing you will notice is that the pointed top of my front lining piece is the opposite of my main fabric piece. You want to make sure those are opposite because they're going to be right sides facing and you want them to align. So just make sure you have those facing opposite, and we're going to repeat those exact same steps that we did earlier. I'm just going to pin the back lining piece to the front lining piece, and then I'll sew this down, trim my seam allowance, and once we've done that, I'm going to do the exact same thing we did earlier. I'm going to take my strap piece, place that right sides facing, and I'm going to pin that down to the front, sew into place, and then we will trim off that seam allowance just like what was done with our main fabric piece. And once you're done with this, you should have 2 dresses. You should have your lining and your main fabric dress. So my lining dress is still laid out. That is inside out. I'm grabbing my main fabric dress so you can see it is right sides out, and I'm going to put my main fabric dress inside my lining dress, and I'll put this inside and kind of shake it out so everything gets even. But when you do this, think of it this way: your right sides are facing. So the right side of my main fabric dress is facing the right side of my lining dress, and I'm going to try and align all of those seams, and then we're going to pin all the way around the back to the front as well as the entirety of the sash. So I'm pinning all of this, and then once I get to that back place, I want to make sure that all of my seams are aligning. So now you can see I've done my sash. You're also going to do the end of that, And then I'm going to do all the way around the front and all the way around the back, make sure all of my seams are aligning, and then we will sew this into place. And I use a ton of clips while doing this. You want to make sure everything is aligning and you've got it all down. And I'm going to sew all of that and close everything up. And then once again, we're just going to trim off all that seam allowance so that everything lays flat. And we're going to take this and put it right sides out, and you should have a fully lined seamless dress. So all of your seams should be hidden in between the two layers. And now all that's left is we are just going to hem our two layers. So here I am, I'm just going to do a rolled hem for both my lining and for my main fabric. So once both of those have been hemmed, you can actually stop here if you are just doing the around the neck version instead of the cross back. If you are doing the cross back, once I've gotten everything hemmed, I'm going to grab my D ring. So they look like this. You can get them at most of your craft stores. And we are going to sew the flat side into our back. So you're going to have that on the opposite side of where your sash is. So you can have that across back. I like to put this on and tell people put it where it is most comfortable for you. And I do this by hand just so it can easily be removed and I can wear the dress both ways. Now this is sped up, but let me tell you, I really reinforce this because I'm doing it by hand. And I want to make sure that the ring is secure. And I also do the sides so that I know the ring can't go back and forth and that it's staying into place, because you are going to have some pressure and some pull on that D-ring. So you want to make sure it's tied and sewn in really tight. And once you've done this, that is actually our very last step. I love that this dress comes together so easy and it's very beginner friendly. Please let me know if you have any questions and follow along if you want to see next month's pattern release.